Write a program to input a number, find an output if the number is even or odd. So it's just one number that needs to be input, and we're checking. We're checking if the number is even or odd. Let's first understand, what does even mean? A number is even. Generally, if you ask a student, what does it mean if a number is even? They will tell you a number is even if it can be divided by 2. Well, if a number can be divided by 2, does that mean it is even? So let's take the number 6. 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. So 6 is even. Let's take the number 7. 7 divided by 2 is equal to 3.5. So is this even? 7 is not an even number. So it's not correct to say that a number is even if it can be divided by 2, because 6 and 7 can be divided by 2. The right way of knowing when a number is even is to say if it can be divided by 2, and the key part to this is without remainder. So if we look at the first case, in this case here, 6 divided by 2, 6 divided by 2 and the remainder was 0. And in this case, 7 divided by 2 is 3.5 if we put this into a calculator. But if we perform long division, 2 can go into 7 3 times, and your remainder is 1. So if you look at any odd number, take any odd number. Let's take another one, 9. 9 divided by 2. 9 divided by 2 is 4, remainder 1. But if I take an even number, let's take another even number like 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5 with the remainder of 0. So the rule here is that when you divide a number by 2 and when the remainder is 0, then you know it is an even number. That is an even number. And when you take a number, let's take 11, any odd number for that matter, divided by 2, 11 divided by 2 is 5, but your remainder is always 1. For an odd number, you'll always get the remainder of 1. So now that we understand that we need to perform division, but we need to look at the remainder, the next step we need to ask ourselves is, what operator can I use to perform division, but to look at the remainder? So we know that to perform division, we use the slash operator that is used for division. So what operator can I use that will perform the division but check the remainder? And that operator is called modulus. Modulus. This operator actually performs division, as we had indicated if we look at this example here, right? Modulus will perform the division, but it returns the remainder part is what is returned. So if we can check if the number modulus 2 gives us a remainder of 0, we will then know that the number is even. So these are the main points that we need to understand when we are writing this program to determine if it is even or odd. Let's look at the solution. So in this example, in line 1, if we look at line 1, that's here, I am inputting my number, right? I'm inputting the number. and the number is converted to an integer. I'm storing it in a variable called num, and we then say if num mod 2 equals 0. Num mod. So this we say as mod because that's modulus. Modulus means perform division but take remainder. So if you divide and you get the remainder, and if that remainder is equal to 0, that means the number is even. And else, if it's not even, it has to be odd. So I don't need to do a check, else if check. I can say immediately, else the number is odd in this case. I think it's also important to highlight that when you're checking for equality, you use the double equal to sign. We don't use the single equal to sign because the single equal to sign, if you look at line 1, that is used for assignment. Take whatever is on the right-hand side and put it in the variable on the left-hand side. That is assignment. So whenever you're using an if statement, look at line 3, if you're using an if statement and you want to check if the left-hand side and the right-hand side are equal, you will check for equality using a double equal to sign. So if we look at the test at the bottom, if I enter a number 10, you will see it displayed the number is even. So that's correct. Again, I've got exactly the same program on this side, and I entered 15. I entered the number 15, and the output was the number is odd. So this program seems to work for even numbers and odd numbers. Let's look at one more case. What happens if you enter the number 0? At line 1, I enter the number 0. So if you take 0 modulus 2, how many times can 2 go into 0? So 2 cannot go into 0, right? And 2 goes into 0. 2 can go into 0. 2 cannot go into 0. So your answer 0 modulus 2 is actually not 0, it is 2, but the remainder is still 0. There's nothing left over. 2 couldn't go into 0. So it is 2 with no remainder. Remainder is 0. So when you test this program and you enter the number 0, the condition is actually true. And it then, if you look at the output, enter a number and you enter 0, because the condition is true, it's going to say that the number is even. But is the number 0 even? Or is it odd for that matter? We know that the number 0 is neutral. So it's neither even nor odd. So with the way we've written our code, if you enter 0, it's because the condition is true, it's going to print the number is even. So that is incorrect. And how can we fix this? How can we, if we enter the number 10, it should say even. If I enter 15, it should say odd. And if I enter 0, it should then say neutral. It should say neutral. So how can we now write the code for something like that to cater for those 3 cases? There are a few ways of writing the code, but we want to test for the neutral state, which is 0. We want to test for the even case, and we want to test for the odd case. So what's important to understand in this case is check for the 0 first. All right. So I'm going to input my number, int input, and I'm going to say enter number, right? Two brackets. I've got my number. And the first check would be if num is equal to, remember, double equal for equality, it's a double equal to 0. So, well, a double equals if num is equal to 0. So that's the special case. And if it's equal to 0, then print immediately. Print number is neutral. Or if you want to say number is 0. But in this case, I want to say the number is neutral. So that's the first case you should check if it is equal to 0. Then I'm going to go in my next case. I'm going to say else. Well, actually, I'm not going to say else. I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to say else if. And I'm still making a check. And now I'm going to check if num modulus 2 equals 0. So now I'm performing the second check. So the first check was 0, it went in there. Else if is the second check. If that is true, I'm going to say print number is even. Now, I need to do the final check when it is odd. But if I think about this, if the number is not neutral and it's not even, then it means it must. I omitted the 2 dots here. There should be those 2 dots. If it goes into the else, it means the if failed, that would have failed. The else if also failed, so it's not 0, it's not even, then I don't have to make a check. It has to fit into the category of number is odd, because there are only 3 categories: neutral, right, even, or odd. So this is how you would write a 3-way, a multi-way if. This is a multi-way if, but of importance in this question is to know that I needed to check for the 0 first. And once I got that check out of the way, and it's not 0, it would move on to check if it is even, and if it was even, it comes into the print number is even. If it's not even, it will print the number is odd. Remember as well that this is one block. This is one block. What does that mean? It means once you come into one of these statements, for example, if I enter the number to be 0, is num equal to 0? True, because my num is 0. So it will come in and say number is neutral. And because it's a nested if statement, it's one block, you are not going to test the else if and the else. It's a multi-way if. The if was true, so you ignore the else if, you ignore the else, and you go out of the block. That's how a multi-way if works. Let's assume our number is 10. If the number is 10 equal to 0? That's false. So move on to the else if. Is 10 more 2 equal to 0? Yes, 10 more 2 is equal to 0. It will then print number is even and come out of the block. It's not going to go to the else. It will, the minute it finds one condition to be true, it comes out of the block. Let's do one last test. And this time round, if num is 15, is 15 equal to 0? False. Move on. Else if 15 mod 2 equal to 0, no, that's false. 15 mod 2, the remainder is not 0. So here, the first 2 conditions failed. There's an else. It means I have to go into the else if the 2 conditions above failed, and it's going to print the number is odd. So this is how you would use a multi-way if to test if the number is 0, which is neutral, if it is even, or if it is odd.